So cork can add some nice height buildup and nice texture to your bases. Just gotta make sure the glue's dry here. Well, nice. So this is a constant problem with cork that I've always hated. You either have to pin or do something structurally to hold the model on, and it's just so much work that I kind of don't like using cork anymore. So I over-engineered it. So I went ahead and made a mold, poured some resin in, and cast up some bits of basically cork, but they have structural integrity. I also did some pipes and some bricks to add some extra texture to my city bases. So to start this whole thing off, I've got some cork that I've already put some cracks and some like busted up bits, and I'm starting to glue this all down onto some cardstock. Now the cardstock's nice and thin so that I can peel it off later, and that brings us to the mold box. I'm using nails to pin these pieces in place. I'm going to seal them up with wax to make them watertight for the silicone later, but the nails give me a nice ability to kind of figure out where I want it and reposition it if it's too big or too small. Once I get to the size that I want, I give it a nice test fit and kind of look at any open spaces that I have that I might want to add those pipes into, and maybe some stacks of bricks so I have a little bit something extra in this. The silicone is going to cover the whole thing. You may as well use as much as you can to actually get something out of it. So I've tacked down all the bits of base string, which is some sticky wax, and now I'm going to tack down the main box structure as well. And then I'm going to come through with some blue sprue wax and seal the whole thing up and get it ready for the silicone pouring. And to do all this wax melting, I'm just using a soldering iron on a low setting just because it's something that I have and it's pretty easy to do. Once that's all sealed, I went ahead and I mixed up some Smooth On Umu 30. I have a video that has a little bit more on this. I'll link right here. But you want to go ahead and pour in the lowest section and let the silicone fill up from the bottom. Cover all of your pieces that you're trying to make a mold of, and then just kind of let it hang out. And once you've given it like 24 hours to dry, we get to demold it. So first I'm going to pull all the nails that I've put in here to make sure that I don't get stabbed with one of those while I'm peeling it off, because that hurts. I've done it before. And then we just peel back these sides. The wax snaps right off, which is super nice. Way better than using hot glue. I've done that, and the wax is just significantly easier to use. And then we're going to take our time here on the back and peel away this cardstock. You want to go slow to keep the texture that you cast in there. The faster you go, the worse your mold's going to be, and the less it's going to last. Now you're going to see some cork left in the mold in some of these, and that's totally fine. The first casting will get a lot of that out, and in all reality, if there's a little bit of cork on my castings, I don't really care because it's at least the same texture. This is the Smooth On Polyurethane 310, which is again a 1:1 by volume ratio. Now you want to make sure you're wearing gloves and you're wearing a respirator and following all the safety protocols for this. This stuff isn't super good for you. And I'm going to put in a little bit of resin dye. You can't just use normal paint. Water in this will end very badly. So you want to use something like the So Strong pigment from Smooth On, or the specialty resin and chemical pigment that's all specifically for polyurethane resin. I'll leave some links in the descriptions to exactly what I'm using. Now this stuff cures white. So it looks like it's black, it looks like there's way too much pigment, but this will actually end up like a light gray. And once it's thoroughly mixed and poured into the other container and thoroughly mixed again to make sure we have all of the resin goodness, that brings us on to actually pouring this. Now I'm pouring this in my vacuum chamber because that's where I normally do a lot of my pours, and it's already covered in resin goo, but I didn't actually run the vacuum because it doesn't need it. So I've poured it into all the molds, and I'm taking a popsicle stick just to wipe off all of the excess. That'll make these easier to come out and kind of break off from each other a little bit easier. Now we just watch it cure. It's going to take a lot less time for you than it did for me. You'll see it go from a dark black to a light gray, and you'll also see some bubbles forming. Now that forms in the curing process because of moisture, so the vacuum chamber wouldn't have even helped against that. You need a pressure pot to solve that problem. And once that's fully cured, I think I gave it a full day on this one, you can actually pull them out. On this piece here, you can see a little bit of the cork that was left in the mold that this casting actually pulled out. Now you can chip this off if you want, or you can leave it on there and paint over it. And that brings us to our little scrap box here. These are all different castings that I've done of multiple different molds even, and different colors that I've played around with. You can see here most of these come out gray. I think that kind of makes sense. Did some yellow for fun, some green. This is what it looks like with no pigment at all. So where does that leave us? Well, we have our lieutenant here glued on, much more solid joint. Definitely not going to just fall off of this one. So is this over-engineered and too much work really to put into this? Maybe. Did I learn some stuff? Definitely. Was it fun? Sure. I hope you liked this video. If you have any questions, as always, leave them in the comments. And thanks for watching.